Everybody, today we're going to talk about something called the vertex form of a parabola. And our essential question is, how can I predict how a parabola looks from its equation in vertex form? Now, a couple of things I want you to realize is there's a couple ways to write an equation that will make these parabolas or these U-shapes. So far, we've been looking at standard form. And we talked about standard form, we talked about polynomials, and so this is our quadratic equation in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c. There's another way to write an equation that will also produce parabolas. It's called vertex form. And it looks like y equals a times x plus h squared plus or minus k. And we're going to talk about what each of these pieces, a, h, and k, tell us about our parabola. Now to start, we're going to look at decimals for just a moment here. And we're going to look at this first equation. So we have y equals 2 times the quantity x minus 4 squared plus 3. And it's graphed over here in red. The first thing I want you to notice is what is the vertex. If I touch on the graph, I can see that the vertex is positive 4, positive 3. All right, so we can see that. Notice there is a 4 and a 3 in an equation. Now what I want you to notice next is what happens if I change the number in front of the parentheses. So I'm going to copy this entire equation. Only difference here is I'm going to change this 2 to a 5. The first thing I want you to notice is that the vertex is still 4, 3. But notice that the parabola, both parabolas open up, and this parabola, the blue parabola, is a lot more narrow. Okay, let's try that again. I copy my original one, and I make this just a 1 in front. Notice that's a little bit wider, but it still opens up. All right, again, the vertex hasn't changed. This last one, what if we make this a negative 2? Well, notice the negative 2, the vertex is still here at 4, 3, but now the parabola opens upside down. So what I want you to realize is the number in front of the parenthesis is going to tell you whether or not your parabola opens up or opens down. When it's positive, it opens up. And when it's negative, it opens down. Now let's look a little bit more about those the number inside the parentheses. So I'm going to get rid of these examples. Let's say in this case, I copy my parabola, but instead of having x minus 4, what if I make it an x plus 4? Now, notice my vertex. I like that if I do that. Hold on a second. Let's put in a note. My vertex is now at negative 4. Oops. Negative 4, comma 3. But notice that when it was a minus sign inside the parentheses, the vertex was at positive 4. And when I put a plus 4 inside the parentheses, it was a negative 4, so it's opposite. So notice the number inside the parentheses is the first number in the ordered pair for my vertex. All right, notice that when I had a plus 3 on the outside, notice in both cases, the y-coordinate was 3. Well, what if I change it now to minus 3? Notice the parabola is actually the same. I know it looks a little wider, but that's because it's been pulled down a little bit. But notice now my vertex is at 4, negative 3. So notice that in this particular case, my vertex is now at 4, negative 3. So notice the second number always matches this number at the end, the plus or minus, but it's actually the same. Plus 3, the vertex, the y-coordinate is positive 3. But when it's a minus 3 on the outside, the vertex is at negative 3. Now, if you want, you can play around some more with this. I'll put the link to this activity into Schoology so you can play around with the numbers a little bit if you'd like. But let's go back to our notes and let's summarize. So in our vertex form, this first number here will tell you whether it opens up or down. We call that A. So if A is positive, it opens up. And if A is negative, it opens down. Now, H and K are going to help us with our vertex. This is going to help us find our vertex. So notice that if you have a plus H, then you have a negative H in our vertex. And if you have a plus k, then it would be a k that stays the same. So inside is opposite, outside it stays the same. If you have a minus h, I'll go over here, in the equation, then it's a positive h for my vertex. And if this is a negative k on the outside, it's going to be a negative k on the inside. So we want to keep that in mind as we look at some more examples. All right, so let's look at this one. For each parabola, we're going to name the vertex, identify it if it opens up or down, and we're just going to make a quick sketch, nothing fancy. All right, so in my equation, y equals 3 times x plus 5 squared plus 2. Since the 3 is positive, I know that it opens up. The plus 5 inside the parentheses, remember we do the opposite. So since this is a plus 5 in my ordered pair, my vertex is going to be at negative 5. And when you have a plus 2 on the outside, that stays the same. So it's going to stay positive 2. So I'm going to plot my vertex at negative 5, 2. So starting at the center, I'm going to count left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up 2. Here's my vertex. And then I need my parabola to open up. Now my vertex is the low point on my parabola, so I want to try to make the two sides look fairly similar. And that's a quick sketch of my parabola. If I want something more exact, I'd make a table and plot 4 or 5 more points. Let's try another one. Let's say I have y equals negative x minus 3 squared. So this negative sign on the outside is really like a negative 1. So because it's negative, we know it's going to open down. The minus 3 on the inside, we always do the opposite. So since this is a minus 3, I'm going to put a positive 3 inside my vertex. And since nothing is after the parenthesis, I'm going to imagine that there's a plus 0 there. So my vertex is going to be at positive 3, 0. So I'm going to start at the center. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 0. And then it's going to open down. It's going to look kind of like that. My parabola. Let's try one more like that. What if I have y equals x squared minus 6? All right, there's nothing in front of the x. I'm going to think of there as being a 1. So since it's positive, we know it's going to open up. Now, x squared by itself is really like saying x minus 0 squared. So that tells me that in my vertex, I'm going to have a 0 in the first spot. And this minus 6 here on the end, remember we keep that sign the same. So I'm going to keep it negative 6. So my vertex is going to be at 0, negative 6. And it's going to open up. So I'm going to start at the center. I'm going to count down 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we know that it doesn't go right or left at all because of the 0 in the front. And then we know it opens up. So it's going to look kind of like this. What if I want to go backwards? What if I want to write a possible equation for this parabola? All right. Now, the first thing I notice that it opens down. And that tells me my value for A is going to be negative. We don't know exactly what number it's going to be, but we know it's going to be negative. All right, then let's look at our vertex. Well, if I find the equation or the ordered pair for my vertex, starting at the center, I see I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right. And then I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. So 5, negative 4 is my vertex. So my equation is going to be y equals, I need a negative sign in front. I don't know if it's a negative 1, a negative 2, a negative 3, a negative half, but pick a negative number. Then we're going to write x. Now, since the 5 is positive, I'm going to write minus 5 because it's always the opposite for our first coordinate of our vertex. Don't forget to square so we actually get that parabola shape. And then the second coordinate is negative 4, and we want to keep that the same. So it's going to be minus 4. Last one. So this one opens up. And that tells me that A is going to be positive. And my vertex, notice that if I start at the center, I go 0 to the right, and then I go up 1, 2. So my vertex is at 0, 2. So my equation, y equals, I have to have a positive number in front of the parenthesis. It could be a positive 1 or positive 2. We're not really sure. And then my vertex is at 0. So it'd be x minus 0 squared. And my second coordinate is 2. So I keep it the same, still positive, plus 2. Normally we simplify that so that we just write y equals x squared, because x minus 0 is just x plus 2. And that's a possible equation for my parabola. Thanks for listening, and good luck with your assignments.